Okay, welcome back, everybody. Um, Day number 2 back in session. I'm going to turn it over to Katie to introduce our next hour.
Thank you, commissioners. So this session of the budget hearings kind of wraps up your primary justice system partners and reflects. So the folks that we have here at the table, I'm going to start to my left and go down. We have Lee Hausman, who's the Assistant Director in Youth Services of Criminal Justice Services, Annie Curtis, whose title I might give an incidental promotion, but kind of business manager of criminal justice services. She does all their budget. District Attorney Dakota Loomis, our Chief Judge, Mark Simpson, Mary Beth Diaz, our Court Trustee, Casey Forsyth, our Director of the Self-Help Center, and Sam Allison Natali, who's the Executive Director for Kansas Holistic Defenders, who is a community partner, but we have always kind of kept to them in this session because of the role that they play with the rest of our other partners. And I will say again, as a reminder, what you heard yesterday from the overview of the budget, we had a couple supplemental requests that came from district court for positions to help provide additional support in the self-help center. One of those was to create or to make the whole full-time position of the court navigator and then also our eviction diversion coordinator. Both of those positions have previously been funded to some degree by grant funding that was set to expire at some point during 2026. Because district court did a really good job this year of going through their budget, and as they have anticipated vacancies or experienced vacancies, there was a lot of they got really creative in reducing places across their budget and personnel, and through that we were able to just incorporate those two positions into the proposed budget. So you do not have the supplemental request for those two positions. They are included in Sarah's proposed budget to you. You do have one supplemental request from district court to add additional attorney time within self-help center. And that is it would be offered through, I want to say Kansas Legal Services. They can answer more questions about that, but that's the one supplemental request that you have from our primary court partners. And you have several supplemental requests for consideration from Kansas Holistic Defenders. I will say we have started, and I think Sarah has shared this with you maybe last week. County administration, district court, and Kansas Holistic Defenders are in very early parts of conversation around just the discussion of the role of KHD as a community partner and some of kind of, where visions that we have for moving forward. And so we're very early in some of those conversations, but I think that kind of covers the highlights for this group for today.
Thanks, Katie. Commissioner Dorsey, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I got a basic question. Since the district court is part of the state, are you on a July calendar year, July to June 31st for the state budget?
Date is
I think it's
July
yeah,
1st.
July.
So that would cover salaries for a lot of the court staff.
Thanks.
I have a court trustee question,
Oh.
or it could be a budget question from a court trustee. So the narrative talks about the court trustee fees being eliminated, but there's still a line item in our revenues for 316,000. I wondered if people could help me understand.
I'm not sure I'm following question.
Commissioner Willie, we looked into that. So we adjusted in the court trustee fees come into the top of the general. So after your question to me, Brooke and I looked back at what Mary Beth sent us, and one of the revisions that you're going to have is that in that narrative is that we're reducing the court trustee fees at the top of the general from I think we budgeted them at 260 last year. But we had increased it to 316. We're going to move that back down. to 275.
Because I think the conversation in the narrative was specifically around fees collected during child support collections and that was being eliminated. Are there other fees that are staying in that count for that revenue?
Those fees are not being eliminated. That's our revenue for
Okay.
child support collection.
Okay, thank you.
And we're pretty steady with that revenue year over year. So.
And there were two positions eliminated for some savings, and one was the assistant court trustee. And it looks like the paralegal also was that. Are there existing paralegals that will stay? And this is one that's a position being.
Correct. We have historically handled the court debt collection contract. And that was eliminated in December of 2024. So over the past year, we've had that extra paralegal who was dedicated to the court debt collection contract. And she was planning to retire about 6 months into 2025, but she ended up staying longer. She actually just retired. So she stayed on and did some special projects for us. But it was just that position was naturally eliminated since we don't have the need for that position with the court debt collection contract being eliminated.
And I always appreciate people taking a look at that in their budget of what positions are not needed anymore. So thank you for that.
Commissioners, other questions about the district court supplemental request, since we're talking with district courts right now? I'll ask, do you think that, so there's two different supplemental requests that have been funded that I think are critical to self-help centers' success in the future. And I also appreciate that that was possible by finding other places in the budget to eliminate that. I'm curious, moving forward, do you anticipate for either the eviction diversion coordinator or the court navigator position that there are possible grant funding opportunities? Like, have you all been exploring any of that to determine whether or not there's alternative options for funding of these positions, which were sort of started up either with ARPA dollars or with the state courts grant? Just curious to have a little bit more context about that. And maybe the answer is no, not for these positions, but for other positions. I'm just kind of curious now that we're at this 3-year benchmark, where you all are thinking about that long term. And if the answer is different for each position, help color that in too.
I'd say that I am always on the lookout for grant funding just in case, especially for those two positions. I don't anticipate, and I haven't found any grant funding for those two positions. We are continuing to participate in like pilot programs that come with like instructional and kind of oversight help from those national entities that we work with. But so far they haven't resulted in any direct funding to the positions, but I am always on the lookout for that. I just don't have anything specific to bring to you today.
That's helpful. Thanks. Yeah, and I appreciate you highlighting that. Being part of those, like the National Sprint and other cohorts, is a great opportunity for technical assistance. And sometimes the technical assistance does lead to, different pots of money that are hard to come by otherwise, that don't come from the federal or state government. Maybe we love those dollars if we can bring them into the community anytime. So, I'm supportive of these programs continuing and hoping that it's possible to still figure out how to increase capacity over time with some braided funding opportunity as Self-Help Center really gets more good work under its belt to be able to talk about and some of the data collection that has been possible so far with the eviction diversion coordinator program in particular.
I would point out that the district court got an OJA grant for equipment recently that we processed. So we routinely work with district court on their grant applications.
Floor is open, commissioners. Any questions for any of our partners?
I have some
if it's okay, can we move on to Kansas Holistic Defenders? Okay. So I'm looking at some of the data that you provide us, and I've seen that the caseloads have continually gone down after year for your attorneys. The total number of cases they've had. Can you describe how that's better outcomes for your clients?
I'm sorry, when you say the total, are you saying we're doing more cases every year?
But my math, and correct me if I'm
Uh-huh.
wrong, it looked like that, and you've talked about wanting to reduce the number of cases each attorney has, right?
No, so we have right now 90 cases per county funded attorney. So the county funds 3 attorneys and and we are handling 270 cases at a time. Now we additionally have 2 other attorneys that are not funded by the county that also handle some of those. And part of the reason why is, let's say we hire a brand new attorney in September, right? That attorney is going to take a while to get up to a full caseload. And so, or if an attorney moves up to, say, a felony position, we don't want to just dump cases on attorneys. And I have, despite not having any part of my compensation funded by the county, right now I have about 20 or so misdemeanors, and these are just clients I've worked with for a long time who I think would be better served by continuing to be represented by me than to transfer those off immediately. But overall, our caseloads per attorney are going up. Most of our attorneys right now are not at a full caseload of 90. I think we or close to that. But each of our county misdemeanor funded attorneys, those 3 attorney positions, are having their caseloads go up as my caseload goes down and the felony attorney's misdemeanor caseload goes down. So our goal is to have basically each of those 3 positions as close to that case cap as possible. And they are steadily ticking up each to a full caseload, and about 80 to 90 is about as much as is really possible for somebody to handle at one time before the quality goes down. We are continuing to represent at all times either the same or an increasing number of people with the same funding from the county. And each of the attorneys that the county funds are moving up towards a full caseload. We don't need anyone's cases to go down. The case caps are basically about optimal in terms of what folks can handle in a given year. And that turns into each attorney handling about 150 cases a year.
Okay. I'm going to check my data on that. So the measures that you provide for Douglas County really talk about caseload. Are there any measures that you're keeping that talk about, the impact of the holistic services?
Absolutely. For instance, as part of, our contract is shifted. So we used to have a contract that requested quarterly measures of outcomes. And the county has ceased to request our outcomes data and no longer requests that those outcomes tracked by, say, race or other demographic factors. We still maintain those. And so we can produce at any time our case outcomes, which continue to be, I think, very good. But they're just not part of our contract with the county. The county hasn't asked us to produce those as part of our reporting now. But additionally, we keep data on a variety of things, even that the county isn't asking us for. We track whether our clients are receiving case management at the beginning to assess whether or not that is something that they may need. We are also tracking data on all agency referrals. So at the end, so last year we produced for the county every outside agency referral categorized by, is this a drug evaluation? Is this treatment? Is this job placement? Is this, and we, I believe, made about 287 agency referrals for folks for needs outside of the four corners of their case. So we have a substantial amount of data on our impact, both on how cases are resolving. Are they resolving in a way that's favorable to our clients? And the outside agency referrals that are, especially our client advocate, is responsible for connecting people to. Does that answer your question?
Well, I'm more interested, I mean, it answers the question, but I want to follow up with what you talked about were inputs, you know, whether they got referrals or not. But what about outcomes? Like, I'm interested in why holistic defense is having a long-term impact. Are we seeing probation met? Are we seeing no arrest within 12 months? What data do you have on that to show us that by doing holistic defense rather than just public defense, that you're really seeing a long-term impact?
So those types of evaluations have been done a lot of other places. We have been seeking essentially funding for a research partner to do that. So we got all the way through to the final stages of board approval for a study funded by Arnold Ventures that would have been conducted by Sam Houston University, comparing our outcomes to the traditional panel. Ultimately, Arnold Ventures said that essentially it's not randomized. It's not exactly randomized who gets our services and who doesn't. And so they felt it was an insufficiently scientific basis to conduct the study. So those studies, getting, you know, typically a research partner to conduct them, cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so we are partnering with research institutions to do those studies, but it's very hard when the basis for the comparison, the basis for the control group isn't randomized, for at least in the current research environment to get a major funder to do that study. I hope that, and you know, this is part of what we've been talking about with the counties. If we transition over to a voucher model for our attorneys, then that may create the circumstances in which a real apples to apples comparison is possible. But yeah, we have lots of data as to our impact, but no one is collecting data as to the control group. And so there isn't a basis on which to make a research study unless, you know, there's funding for somebody to do that. Does that answer your question?
Kind of following up on Commissioner Kelly's first question there, but also for Sam, in terms of you've been having folks at first appearances, but not necessarily every day of the week, or that kind of comes and goes. What's the status for that right now?
So this relates to one of our supplemental requests. When we first did our contract here, there were about 60% fewer misdemeanor cases filed every year, 50 to 60, depending on if you're using 2019 numbers or not. And so, in fact, when we first got started, it wasn't 3 attorney positions, it was 2.5 caseloads. And since then, charging has increased significantly. And so while we are taking more cases than we've ever taken before, we cannot take all of the cases that are assigned. And so those go to the panel.
How many days a week are you staffing first appearances?
Well, so we staff first appearances every day of the week. However, we only accept 1 day a week, which is rotating. We only accept appointments for current clients. So if we already represent someone, it doesn't make any sense for their case to go to a different attorney. But 1 day a week, we will request that cases for individuals that we do not currently represent on another matter are assigned to the panel. And this was partially to make it so that we weren't constantly hitting our case cap and having to stop. Rather, if we distribute the rate on which we are taking cases, sort of slow the rate that we take on, then
So
yeah.
my understanding was that at least kind of over the course of the time that you've been serving here, that there have been kind of random days where Holistic Defenders has not come on Mondays or because of capacity or caseload, but that wasn't communicated necessarily to partners that could have helped fill in that gap. And I know the time that I went to first appearances, which was, just one, and there was nobody from, it was a Monday and there was nobody from Kansas Holistic Defenders. So are you saying that it has always been every day and yet not taking cases necessarily, but being
For-
present at first appearances, or
For the
my
last,
misunderstanding?
for the last 2 years, typically, we started just not with 1 day a week. And then I think the judges had wanted us to rotate those. So now we do a rotation. Typically, the only circumstance in which we would not be at first appearances at all is if none of the people on that day, if it is a freeze day and none of the people that are seen that day are our current client. So for instance, if we typically, even if it is a freeze day, we'll go tell the administrative assistant, hey, we expect to take these 3 people and not these 4 people, and are still present at the first appearance.
I think I understand. I'm sure there'll be other questions, so I don't want to keep going with that.
Other questions for KHD commissioners? I just want to check in about the supplemental request for the missed invoicing. So I think I generally understand what happened. I understand the point of the request. Can you just talk to us a little bit about how you've made sure internally to rectify that so that it's not something that you have to come back to the county commission and ask for in the future?
Yes. So basically, the issue is we did 12 months of work and we got paid for 10 months. And we submit our monthly reports every month, and we did submit our monthly reports. We submit our invoices separately through QuickBooks. And we use a bookkeeper to do the reconciliation on our QuickBooks. We are used to being 1 month behind in the sense that at the end of May, right, we submit the invoice for June, and that won't be paid out until sometime during June. It appears that there was a bookkeeping error where the invoices were marked as received when they had not been received. And this happened in 2 places. This happened both with our outside bookkeeper and our then director of operations that was doing that. It was appearing in our system as a discrepancy. We couldn't find it. So when we were alerted at the end of the year, if you have any unpaid invoices, it looked to us like we hadn't. And it turned out that we had. This is $75,000. We have enough reserves to be able to absorb that, but that's basically 2 years of our annual fundraising. And the work was completed, the reports were submitted, but the invoices were not correctly processed on our end. We've corrected this both with our bookkeeper and with a different review process for our invoicing going forward. So I don't think this will be an issue. The upside is that money was simply not spent by the county last year. So it is not truly an additional cost to the county, but we do need to be paid for all of the work that we did in 25, and understand that books close. It's not possible to make a late payment after the county's books close, and this is the only way that we can get paid for those back due invoices. The remedy has been on both with our bookkeeper and our internal SOPs around the review of payments received and invoices being sent out.
Thank you for walking us through that. And then my question goes to you, Sarah. Given, the fact that the books were closed, reestimate had been done, and therefore this is a supplemental request. If it were approved by the commission, how do you see that impacting? I mean, it just impacts mill for 2027, right? Because
I don't know that it would impact the mill levy. To me, it would be a one-time expense.
okay, just a one-time expense. Okay.
yeah.
Yep. Thank you for saying
Yeah.
that out loud. Sometimes my brain doesn't connect all the dots,
Yeah.
looking through all the pages. Okay. Thank you.
I guess I'd follow up on that. We typically don't pay things that we weren't invoiced for. We can't necessarily police everybody on that account. How often does this happen? If this were to be something that we rectified after the fact, even though there wasn't invoiced in time, are we kind of opening ourselves up for, other partners to kind of put us in this, having to spend more staff time to manage that contract?
Well, I mean, commissioners, we spend a tremendous amount of staff time trying to follow up on community partners, making sure they have their materials right, their invoices right. I mean, I have a team of folks that spend a lot of time doing that work. What I would say, we have had some folks that have submitted late payments. What we generally do in that situation is we pay it out of the next fiscal year. This wasn't realized until April. So it was much, much later. So sometimes invoices come in like after we've closed the books in mid-January and from a previous year. And so we just attribute that month to that current fiscal year. That's generally how it happens. But because this was so late and I had closed the books quite a bit back, I didn't feel like I could just do that without coming to the commission and getting your input.
Thank you.
I want to revisit the numbers on caseload because I'm looking at our Douglas County data that we have, and there is an asterisk. So I want to give you an opportunity to explain the asterisk. But one of the things we asked you is average attorney caseload, and we do that each month. When I total them up in 2024 and divide by 12, I get an average caseload of 95. These are the data that you reported. Is that correct, Katie? I'm trying to make sure that we're using data to make decisions.
So I think this is a place I think where Sam and I have had several conversations, and it's challenging with the caseload. What I think happens here, Sam does have different, there are times where Sam has had to move folks across to fill the gap for the 3, right? We always need to have 3 attorneys that are covering the misdemeanor cases, but that is not necessarily always a position from a personnel perspective that Sam finds himself in. So I think we have a difference. I think there's been a difference in how each of us probably understand the caseload cap is 90 per attorney. So for this contract, for 3 attorneys, that would be 270 cases. The way I view that, and I probably need direction about maybe this is probably a conversation for us to have. The way I view that is for the 3 attorneys, which generally I always know which 3 attorneys those are, and those have actually been fairly stable for longer chunks. I view that 270 as attributed to those 3 attorneys. But I think what happened, I think how Sam and his team view that is 270 maybe across the agency, which feels different. And I don't. So when we look at individual when you look at the spreadsheet that I keep, so when Sam sends his reports to me each month, I go in and we put those in there. So I think sometimes when we look at just following one attorney kind of across the year, individually, they are not often at, and you see this, they're not often individually at close to 90 cases. Across the agency, for total misdemeanor count, so when we include Sam or when we include some of those attorneys that have moved up maybe to the felony panel, but maybe are still carrying misdemeanors, I think that's probably how from Sam's perspective, I think that's how that caseload cap is being counted, but that feels different to me. Because I look and say, well, this person only has 56 cases. Why are we freezing? But the agency as a whole is maybe at that misdemeanor cap. I don't know if that does that
No,
does that
that's
feel
exactly
accurate
correct.
for how
So
we're talking?
right now, again, I have 24 clients that are on my caseload. If you were to say, Sam, you need to transfer those immediately to your 3 misdemeanor attorneys, I could do that, but I don't think it would be better for anybody. It wouldn't be better for the attorneys. It wouldn't be better for the clients. It might be better for me, but similarly, when people move between, say, a felony and misdemeanor position. So, for instance, Anshul Bonga is one of our felony attorneys. He's right now carrying about 57 cases. He's transferring about 20 of those this month to the misdemeanor attorneys, which will put those 2 misdemeanor attorneys in the range of about 70 each. Now we could say, oh no, all of the cases, not just those 20, need to go immediately. But again, that's not better for the clients because if we are able to transfer those a little bit slower and make sure that people actually get to meet the new attorney who's going to handle their cases, or just hold on to them with the attorney that they're with until those close out, that is just a necessity for being able, for the client not feeling like they're being shuffled around between attorneys.
And I guess that was the point of my original question, was to describe to me why the lower counts, how they're impacting the clients that you're working with. I didn't really want to get into arguing numbers, but
Yeah.
I do think we need to do some work to decide how we're going to record numbers. If we have differences of opinion of that, I think the commission has to articulate what's our expectation there. But I'm interested in hearing why. I mean, you're asking for more attorneys. That was
Yes.
your supplemental request. And my thinking is the reason you're asking for it is that you have by having a lower caseload, you can provide better service.
No,
Am I
this-
misunderstanding?
Yeah, our
that?
request is not to handle the same number of cases with more attorneys. It's just to handle more cases. Right now, so if we do about 150 cases per year per attorney, and the average felony voucher is about $700, the county's spending about $120,000 for those 150 cases. We could do that for far less. So I guess and I may have worded this inartfully in my budget request, but this is not a request to ultimately reduce caseloads. This is a request to do more work in a way that I think can be more affordable to the county. The other advantage to us for having more attorneys, even if they are, not having a reduced caseload, is that it gives us flexibility in the sense of I want to be able to hire somebody who's an all-star attorney out of KU or Washburn. And I can only do that when there's a spot that is opening up. And so being able to have more attorneys on staff means if somebody has a baby, right, there are more attorneys to sort of absorb that caseload while somebody is out. There is more ability to hire, there's more ability to fire because we have more slots that are opening more regularly. And ultimately, it's more affordable to the county than to pay those out for the panel. But we're not asking to handle fewer cases per attorney or to do the same amount of work with more attorneys. That supplemental request is, do you want us to do another 150 cases for the amount of a single attorney? And at the point where you've already invested in the infrastructure, the marginal additional cost of one attorney being paid out on a salary basis versus being paid out on the voucher system, I think works out favorably to the county in terms of but we are satisfied. Well, can't speak for my staff, but as a manager, I'm satisfied with what our caseloads are. The issue with caseloads is not just the overall number of cases, but how quickly they're coming on, right? The earliest part of the case is often the most significant time investment. You got to meet with that person, you got to investigate, find out what's happening. And so it isn't just the overall number that somebody's having, but how, when they get those, when they have to meet those people, how many first appearances are they taking on? And so I am confident that we can get all of our attorneys up over time. But unless we're just dropping 30 files on somebody's desk and saying, here you go, go handle these, that process just takes some time to get people spun up, especially if we're hiring new attorneys and having to give them a training period and, working up their confidence over time.
I think you're hearing some of the questions and concerns that we've struggled with in terms of administering this contract. In a pure public defender model, they don't have braided funding. They don't have other revenue sources. They aren't doing other work. In our community partner model, we've told partners they need to seek other funding. They need to be diversified. They need to look elsewhere. So it's led to some issues like this. Is this a public defender's office? If so, then everybody's just working for us. That's not what we have here. So one of the things that we're trying to, part of what we're trying to solve for in our uncomfortableness about how this contract works is where can we have the services that we need from a public defense model, but not necessarily hold KHD back from the things that it could accomplish without, if we weren't worrying about, is this attorney on our payroll or is it on somebody else's payroll? So that's part of what we're trying to struggle with is there a way that the attorneys could get paid by the case, but also sort of retain that status as the public defender's office, because that would assist the court in sort of knowing who's going to be at first appearance, who's going to take the majority of assignments. And so what does that mean? What's that overhead? And then the question comes into some of the additional holistic things that we're paying for, like the advocate. Well, they're not a billable hour. I mean, they're not one of those three. They're on top of that. So, and I would say I really appreciate Sam and the chief judge being just very open to these conversations that are very different ways of working, and everybody still coming to the table and being open-minded. I really felt like our first meeting was super productive. And so that's why, we've not proposed any sort of changes with his community partner agreement. That full funding is included in the 27 proposed budget, while I think we continue to figure out what's possible. I think there's a good chance it might not work out. And we'll come back to you and report out on that. But I do think this kind of, how do we get around this notion of what is the public defense portion of it, but then let Sam's attorneys get paid by the case. There might be a sweet spot. That's my hope.
That's right. Basically, so and when Sarah initially said, hey, we want you to track time and we want you to think about moving to a voucher system, that's scary. That's a lot of risk, right? It's much easier for us to say contract and salary, and that's fine. But the fact is that there is a need here in all across Kansas that the existing panel system cannot meet for new attorneys going into this work. And I think we can get there. But like, for instance, being able to promote an attorney out of the misdemeanors and into felonies and sustain a full attorney position on the vouchers from appointed cases is, I think, a net good to the county, right? It puts, it puts another person on the panel. They are able to be trained up with us, but the problem is that transition period, which we're going through now, when somebody goes from a misdemeanor caseload to a felony caseload, that misdemeanor caseload is going to have to come down and that felony caseload is going to have to come up. And it does allow us to sustain that position with funding other than county funding. And so I think there are a lot of good possibilities for us transitioning over to a voucher model. But yeah, ultimately, when we started up this, we didn't know that we were going to be able to access other funding the way that we have here. And I think we also didn't know, what what the possibilities would look like to grow that. And the fact is that, our county is okay for now in terms of its ability to sustain with a panel. Most counties in Kansas aren't, right? There are some places that are so hard up for panel attorneys, they're doing involuntary appointments of counsel. And this is not just Kansas, this is Maine and Iowa and Nebraska. And we want to serve that need. We want to be able to grow into other counties, not through perhaps the sort of county contract that we have here, but just through a panel system. And I really appreciate Sarah and Katie in the county in helping think creatively about how we can grow to meet that need and braid the funding while still having some amount of accountability for the cases getting done and the county getting its money's worth for the investment.
Commissioners, I just want to check in about time. It's good conversation and very good context for us to have. I think we've got about 10 minutes left slated, and we have a couple other partners, not necessarily with supplemental requests at the table, but still here. So just want to check in and see if there are questions for other partners or departments.
I had a question back for the courts again, but if there's others for new partners. Nope. I think it might be an Annie question. This is about the equipment reserve balance. So most of these, I kind of have a good feel for what they're holding the money for and how that's going to be spent. But and it may be somebody else's question also. But there, 220,000 in court operating for equipment reserve.
Oh, that court would be Chief Judge and Mary Beth.
Okay. Excellent. Well, pass it down the line and hear from new people. Can you kind of fill me in on what the plans are for that? I know that moving into some new spaces, are there anticipated equipment needs that would come from here? Yeah.
Well, I would say I think that's part of the thinking, is that if there's things that aren't part of the building project, that could be part of it. The equipment reserve could be part of how we meet those needs for things that aren't in the building project. And I know there's other things that have been discussed, I think we have a car or it's not a car, it's a Durango that I don't know where we got it, but there may be needs for other vehicles, things like that. But to be completely honest with you, there's not a big plan for here's how we're going to use the equipment reserve. It's the reserve for when those things come up.
So earlier we talked to the sheriff's office and asked them to kind of come back and line out a plan, and theirs is a little bit more concrete probably for their vehicle replacement schedule and things like that I think they manage internally but haven't really shared. But are there pieces in your budget that could be covered then by this equipment reserve while you kind of create a plan for what's there? There's a fair amount of money sitting there, and I know we've had new furniture and things like that have come in with the new building project. So just, are there some opportunities in our tight budget year to kind of look at some things that could be diverted there instead of against mill levy?
The only things that can be spent out of equipment reserve are equipment. So I cannot pay for software ongoing maintenance. I cannot pay for personnel. I cannot pay for any of those items. So it would have to be an equipment purchase.
Furniture, audiovisual, things like that benefit the court. I'm just unclear on what the money is set aside for.
In the past, that's what it was used for, were for regular upgrades to that building. So that's what we used it for. I would say for a period of time, it's going to sit somewhat fallow and then they can use it for replacements in the next couple of years because we've done a big upgrade.
Well, and there's the continued, ongoing renovations for the existing part of the building. That might be an opportunity to look for things that could come out of that fund.
Yes. Yeah.
I would welcome that.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Other questions, commissioners?
I'd like to check in on tenant right to counsel.
I don't believe that we have, that request is part of the administration's request, which is scheduled for a different day.
Okay,
But
so it's not.
If you have questions now,
I just wanted to clarify that
Okay,
that's
so I just
not
wanted
one of
to-
the requests
For
from
this group?
these partners, but if you have questions about how it's going so far, Self-Help Center might
Okay, so I wasn't sure though if this group was weighing in on that request, and so that's why I was asking. So, but this group would not be weighing in on that particular budget request?
You mean the courts or the DA or no? I mean, the only people weighing in on budget requests are county commissioners.
No, I mean, in on the actual allocation of that request or the work that will be happening within the body of that request?
Maybe you should just ask your question and then we can figure out who should answer it.
Okay, so my question is really around, so tenant right to counsel, we currently have a pilot with that body of work. And so my question is really around, we have a pilot and we are seeking to fund it in 2027, but we don't have the outcomes for the particular pilot. So my question is really around, we don't have outcomes, but yet we want to fund something with no outcomes. So I really just wanted to have a conversation around that. So I wasn't sure if this particular group is weighing in on any of that. And if this group is weighing in on it, I wanted to have that conversation. But if they're not, if this is not a group that would,
I think Sam and Casey could weigh in on that. My understanding is, Casey, maybe you could tell us how long we've been underway, and Sam, and so that would, because we've just started, so it's a little hard to have outcomes in 30 days. So maybe you could tell us a little bit of that.
oh,
Yeah.
I agree. And I think that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to have outcomes within 30 days and we are seeing a budget request. And so that's kind of.
And just to clarify, we've only recommended it be funded one time so that we could continue the pilot.
Well, I can tell you just kind of anecdotally how it's gone. We did start beginning of June with our intakes, divvying out folks to both KLS and KHD at every eviction docket. Personally, I thought it's gone very smoothly. We've offered it to every eviction tenant who's coming in on that answer docket. Some folks are declining, some people are accepting. We are seeing a lot more attorneys at those full-blown eviction hearings before Judge McCabery. Unfortunately, I don't have results or data to show you, hey, the attorney was present and it resulted in this. Steps that self-help has taken, we did update the eviction resource material that goes out to tenants facing eviction. So when they get served, they're going to get a piece of paper that says, hey, there's free legal advice. Contact, here. So they're getting it straight from the jump. But overall, when I see the attorneys at our docket, we're making great use of them. If folks aren't there for eviction, the KLS people are actually picking up the slack and taking folks that are there for collections cases. So I am loving that because people get help when their attorney's there. So I apologize, I don't have hard and fast data on outcomes or how many are taking advantage of it. But I would say thus far, with only 30 days in, I think it's going pretty smoothly.
I can just say, so similarly, it's hard to say the outcomes because these cases take longer than that. We've had one close, and I am looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in our system for this past month. And they're in various stages of the process. I can concur that the partnership's been great. It's great having additional attorneys there. And because of this, as far as I can tell, we haven't had to say no to anyone, right? In that the existing funding through A2J has allowed us to take some. Those that can't be taken under that, we have taken. And there have also been, I think one of the benefits of having two offices there is that, our A2J attorney was on vacation for one of the answer dockets. And on that day, we just let KLS know and said, hey, you should take all of them this week. And that partnership has been really great for making sure that no one falls through the cracks. And the last thing I'll also say is we have had anecdotally more folks coming in because of the work I think that KLS and us and other organizations have done to publicize that this is available, right? Like if we say, hey, you can get an attorney if you come here. We have had people who have come in that said, hey, I came here today because someone told me that I would have someone to talk to. And that's especially huge in some of the instances where sometimes we're seeing evictions happen for people who've already moved out, which is very strange and should not be happening. But the notice goes up on the door of a place they no longer even live in. And because of some of the outreach that has been done, some of those people came in, we got those dismissed, got them removed from the record. So it's hard to say, without the hard data, but I can tell you that anecdotally, that's what it is looking like to me as far as the benefits that we've been seeing.
Thank you. Thank you both. Thanks for that question, Commissioner Anderson. Any other questions, commissioners? Okay, well, we are right on time today, y'all. So thank you all for being here. Hope you have a good rest of your day. And I think another 5-minute reset is helpful for everyone. I'm gonna since I'm gonna look at my clock and we're gonna come back at 11:05.